Our dear viewers of NSTV, welcome yet again to the third episode of understanding what human trafficking is all about. And as you may recall from the first episode, we define human trafficking in reference to three ingredients. Mainly the acts, those are the actions that a trafficker performs on an individual before they traffic them, or during and even after. And the second episode talked about the means. Those are the enablers used by a trafficker to make sure they achieve their actions. And in this particular episode, we shall concentrate on the purpose, which the sole purpose for trafficking an individual is exploitation. But within exploitation, we shall realize there are quite so many forms of exploitation, as you may all be aware of some. We are yet to know more about the others. Welcome again. Exploitation, in the context of human trafficking, speaks into so many things that you can put your mind to, that we usually see but take it on a light note, and we do not actually know or relate it to human trafficking. In Uganda, for our law, the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act, we mention this in a way that we have no limit to the forms of exploitation. To the list, the following are the forms of exploitation that the trafficker can possibly take you through as they want to benefit from you. One, this is very common. We've had it over and over. Labor exploitation. We have seen so many of our people that have been engaged in labor in all forms. And in this kind of exploitation, the trafficker will benefit from your labor. In some instances, the trafficker is the one that is paid the money, whereas in others, you actually get paid, but the money that you're paid is not necessarily what you agreed upon. Or worse still, in some cases, the payment never even comes. So labor exploitation is one form of exploitation when it comes to trafficking in persons, to which the trafficker would like to purpose when they traffic you. The second one is also very common, and this is sexual exploitation. And yes, these days also, sexual exploitation crosses the borderline to also the men. Even the male victims are sexually exploited. Some in brothels, some for jobs or in employment spaces, and even others, the juveniles that are molested. These also happen to victims of trafficking in persons, and we need to be aware. The third form of exploitation you could speak about is for financial gain. This is very common now. The traffickers are doing this a lot, and as long as they get money from your end, as long as they get finances from you, that is the end game for them. There is also that category of traffickers who concentrate on just getting all that little money or much money from the victims as much as possible, and they run away. This is very common when you are engaging in the need to look for labor. We have so many that have fallen victim here in labor recruitment agencies or individuals that come to your spaces promising jobs, and any other person that may lead you or link you into an employment opportunity. Let's be mindful not to fall victim of the circumstances here, and whereby we will find ourselves giving away the little monies that we may have, or even selling properties just to secure a job, and only to find that the job never existed. Let's be mindful about that. The other is, which is also very common, exploitation on the streets. This is common in Kampala streets. You find children who are engaged in street begging as another form of exploitation. This street begging has taken a different vibe altogether, in the sense that there is a network that benefits from these children begging on the streets. And what they do is they pick children from the villages, from rural areas, bring them to town centers, and force them to the streets to beg. Of course, there are people who will sympathize with the children being on the streets and they will give the money to these children. Be mindful and know that this money never ends up in the hands of these children. It only ends up in the hands of the trafficker, who does not even give it to the children but only benefits themselves. So let's be mindful, and good enough now in Kampala, it's even illegal to be found uh, trying to help these street children by giving them money or any kinds of food or things that will keep them on the street. It's better that we hand them over into the right hands, the authorities that will handle the children, like the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, and any other authorities like the police and any other that may fall in that specific uh, grouping. The other form of exploitation is in the category of marriage. We have quite a number of victims that are forced into marriages. This happens very commonly uh, due to cultural tendencies, and sometimes uh, this happens where the family, especially the children, no longer have their parents alive. This form of exploitation only benefits this time the would-be parents or guardians of these people that are being forced into the marriage. Remember, this marriage should be consensual. Otherwise, when you have someone being forced into a marriage, we need to step back and establish under what circumstances are they getting into this marriage. You realize that many of these cases, the victims are actually of trafficking in persons. And let's be alert about it. Let's report about it. Let's save our people from this kind of exploitation. Child marriages also is another form of exploitation that goes along with forced marriages. Very many children are forced into marriages before they are even of age. Very common in rural areas, very common in other cultures that really believe that a child or one that is not yet 18 but 16 or 12 can get into marriage and actually sustain it. This has been a false narrative all along, and now with our Prevention of Trafficking Persons Act, this is a crime. Let's not have children into marriages when they are not of age, or even later on force them into being married to persons they do not desire. The other form of exploitation we talk about in human trafficking is for purposes of organ harvesting. Yes, in this day and era, body parts, body organs are on sale, and they're on sale whether legally or illegally. Now, when it comes to trafficking in persons, there are quite a number of victims that are falling in this category, who are being duped into selling their organs, or some who have even been taken by force, abducted, sometimes even murdered for purposes of harvesting their organs. So let's be mindful that the traffickers have reached this extent and they're going to do anything necessary to take your organs. Let's be careful about it, and let us report to the nearest authorities in case we have any suspicions of such tendencies or such activities ongoing in our communities. Illegal activities is also another form of exploitation when it comes to human trafficking. So many of our victims of trafficking in persons have ended up being engaged forcefully or even seemingly willingly into illegal activities. You can list quite a number of illegal activities, including engagement in armed conflicts by children, the below age, even adults that are in armed conflicts but who are victims of trafficking in persons. We have people that have ended up in terrorism or terrorism activities. that were victims of trafficking in persons or originated from the background of how first having been trafficked. Let's be mindful about this, that many of our victims can easily end up in such illegal activities. The very common one today is online scamming. This is an illegality across the world, and very many victims of human trafficking have been engaged in online scamming, especially in Southeast Asia, in Myanmar. We've had these cases that have come up across East Africa, in Uganda, and across the continent, where our people have ended up in these spaces and they're engaged in such illegalities of online scamming. And yes, it's true, once you're found, this is not very, very, very good for you. Debt bondage. What is debt bondage? This is a situation where an individual is bound to work maybe or to fulfill a service for another person without the will. This happens very commonly with victims of trafficking persons, especially where they are in a position when they have to pay back or to pay up, maybe informally, a debt to their trafficker or the person that helped them reach where they are or get into that space. This is also a major form of exploitation, and it is happening silently or loudly, very common where family members or even the victims decide or choose to keep quiet about it, not even mention it to the authorities, especially the police, for fear of their lives, for fear of loss of their properties, for fear even of never seeing their person again. It is very bad, very dangerous, and we need to pay attention to this and understand that it's a form of exploitation in the context of human trafficking. The other form of exploitation when it comes to human trafficking is human sacrifice. Yes, human sacrifice is a practice where people think that sacrificing a fellow human being will gain them wealth or probably keep them in their employment for many other reasons. But this practice has also been extended by trafficking, especially the children, into this, and they're taken for these harmful rituals. It's a very bad practice. So be mindful that this is also, or we also categorize it under the forms of exploitation for purposes of human sacrifice. And this is also followed with for practice of uh, rituals. In some of our different cultures, people practice human sacrifice rituals, and this is done by first taking part in trafficking another person for this reason. Let's be mindful among the forms of human trafficking for purposes of exploitation. These are also inclusive. And lastly, we'll speak about slavery, or commonly known as slave trade. This was a practice way back, and yes, it is still a practice where we have persons that are trafficked for purposes of slavery or engage them in slave related activities. They work as your servants, they work for long hours, they are used in all kinds of forms, in plantations, in mines, in a way that also dehumanizes them. So, in a general, those are the kinds of or forms of exploitation that happen when it comes to human trafficking. But like I said, we do not limit this bracket because we know any form of dehumanization or abuse of a human right culminates into exploitation, and yes, this can be also categorized in context of human trafficking. For those that can access the X handle, you can access X at mia.ug there, and also X at DCIC UG. Now, in this particular case, there is no full stop between DCIC and UG. There is no dot. It's just X at DCIC UG or X at MIA.ug. And this information can reach our call center and you can be supported, you can be helped, you can help in the rescue of another person. But also, the following contacts can be utilized for purposes of asking for help or for any kind of information that may lead to rescue of another person in a situation of vulnerability to being trafficked. That is 0417 102600. I repeat, 0417 102600 or 0417 346100 or 0417 346 100. Fighting human trafficking starts with me, starts with you.